I never thought I'd fall in love with a millionaire. Not while working 12-hour shifts in a coffee shop, wearing worn-out sneakers, and chasing a dream everyone laughed at. But love doesn't follow the rules of wealth or class, and mine certainly didn't ask for permission. When I met Jordan, I didn't know his last name came with money, power, and a family legacy that stretched generations deep. I also didn't know they'd try to buy me off, that they'd slide a check across my table for $500,000 just to make me disappear. It wasn't a warning, it was a verdict, and the message was clear. You don't belong here. But what they didn't know was that I had a secret. One I had been building quietly while no one was watching, and by the time they found out, it was too late. My name is Ilea. I'm 26. I live in Cleveland, in a one-bedroom apartment that creaks every time I walk. The carpet's old. The heater rattles in winter, but it's mine. I work at Bella's Coffee House, downtown. It's fast, loud, and filled with suits who don't make eye contact. To them, I'm just another name on a cup. But at night, I go home, open my laptop, and study. Business administration, one class at a time, one step closer to the life I want. My dream? To build something of my own. Not for fame, not even for money, but because I've seen what it's like when people are left out of the system. My mom raised me on 3 jobs and one promise. You don't have to start rich to end strong. She believed in me when no one else did, so I learned to believe in myself, even when it was hard. Most of my mornings started the same. After a long night of studying, I'd walk into Bella's, tie my apron, and disappear into routine. By 6:05, the line was out the door. Suits, heels, Bluetooths in ears, eyes on phones. No one said good morning. No one looked up. They ordered fast. Always the same. Triple shot, oat milk, no foam. Everything efficient. Everything expensive. I worked the register most mornings. Sometimes the espresso machine. Other times just cleaning up spills that no one noticed they made. It was a rhythm. Unspoken. Impersonal. They lived in glass towers. I lived below them. Same street, different worlds. Every now and then, someone would glance at my name tag, but it never stuck. To them, I was just the girl at the counter. Invisible, replaceable, forgettable. But I watched, listened, took mental notes, because one day I knew I'd be on the other side of that counter, and they'd have to remember my name. Between shifts, I kept a notebook in my apron. Ideas, frustrations, sketches of tools I wished small businesses had. Most people didn't notice the things I paid attention to, the way local cafes lost customers to delivery apps, or how neighborhood shops got buried under chain store discounts. But I noticed, and I started building. One line of code, one spreadsheet, one late night at a time. My dream wasn't just to make it. It was to create something that helped others make it too. Something that gave small businesses a fair shot in a world stacked against them. Whenever I felt doubt creeping in, I'd hear my mom's voice, "You're more than where you came from." She said it the day I got rejected from a scholarship, and again when I got into night school. She never had much to give me, except belief, and sometimes that's enough to start a revolution. It was a Tuesday. Rain tapped against the windows like it had nowhere else to be. Most customers ordered online that day. The shop was quiet, almost still. I was restocking the pastry case when the door chimed. He walked in, tall, umbrella dripping, suit slightly damp, but what caught me wasn't the way he looked. It was that he smiled, not the polite, practiced kind. A real one, warm, present. He stepped up to the counter and asked, "I'm not from around here. What would you recommend?" No one ever asked that. They barked orders, tapped feet, checked watches, but he waited. I offered 2 choices, one safe, one adventurous. He grinned. "I like adventurous. Let's do that." I remember thinking, that's different. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. He came back the next day. Same smile, same easy tone. "Adventurous again," he said, and pointed to the special. Then he asked my name. Most customers never did. He actually remembered it the next morning. By the end of the week, he wasn't just ordering coffee, he was asking questions. What I studied, why business, what I wanted to build. I told him small pieces, carefully, waiting for him to lose interest like most people did. But he didn't. He leaned in. He asked follow-ups. listened without checking his phone, even remembered details from the day before. When I mentioned tech for local stores, he said, "That's smart. Nobody's solving that. Yet." Something about the way he looked at me, like I mattered, like my ideas weren't too big or too small, made me want to keep talking, and so I did. He asked me out on a Thursday. No fancy lines, no pressure. "Would you want to grab pizza sometime? Something casual?" I said yes before I could overthink it. We met at a little spot 2 blocks from my place. Brick walls, booths with worn cushions, the kind of place where no one's in a hurry. He ordered pepperoni. I chose veggie. We talked while waiting. About books, he was reading Thinking Fast and Slow. I was deep into the Lean Startup for class. He seemed impressed. Then we wandered into tech, politics, the broken education system. He didn't talk over me, didn't try to sound smarter. We laughed more than I expected. He told me he liked hiking, said he missed quiet, said expectations could feel like a cage sometimes. And, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just felt heard. 3 months passed. Quick, effortless, like time moved differently when he was around. We didn't go to expensive restaurants. We walked, cooked pasta at my place, watched movies on my couch with a crooked leg. He never talked about work in detail. Said he did investment stuff. I didn't push. It didn't matter. He never made me feel small, never acted like he was doing me a favor. He made space for me, listened when I ranted about tech equity, remembered the name of my professor, brought me books I mentioned in passing. One night, he said, "You're the most real thing I've had in years." And I felt it. Not the butterflies, not the drama, just the quiet certainty that love could be simple, grounded. True, I didn't know who he really was, but I knew how he made me feel, and that felt enough. We were on my couch halfway through a movie neither of us was watching. His phone buzzed. He stepped out to take the call. When he came back, something had shifted. He sat beside me, quiet, not nervous, heavy. "I need to tell you something," he said. "My full name is Jordan Coleman." The room paused. I blinked. I knew that name. Everyone did. Coleman Group, hotels, real estate, private equity. They sponsored half the buildings downtown. "You're that Coleman?" He nodded once, carefully. Suddenly, my apartment felt smaller, my thrift store blanket rougher, the space between us wider. He looked at me and asked, "Does that change anything?" I didn't answer. Not yet, because I didn't know. I wasn't angry. I was just trying to understand how I'd fallen in love with someone from a world I was never meant to touch. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. He was a millionaire, the kind with generational wealth, private schools, and country clubs, and I was still paying off community college in monthly installments. I kept replaying our time together. The laughs, the quiet dinners, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Was it all still real, or was I just someone different for him, a break from his world? Part of me felt foolish, like I'd missed something obvious. Another part felt betrayed. Not because he lied, but because I'd finally let someone in. And now it felt complicated. But the next morning, he showed up. Same smile, same tone. "Still want your cinnamon spice?" he asked. And somehow, in that moment, I realized he hadn't changed. Maybe his world had more zeros. But his heart? That was still the same, and it still made mine feel safe. A month later, he invited me to meet his family. We flew first class. It was my first time on a plane where the drinks came in glasses, not plastic. The Coleman estate wasn't a house. It was a statement. White pillars, a driveway longer than my entire block. Staff in uniforms. Silence so heavy it echoed. I wore my best dress, pressed it twice, still felt underdressed. As we stepped inside, I could feel it. The weight of everything I wasn't. Every chandelier, every oil painting, a reminder that I didn't belong. Jordan held my hand, but even that didn't stop the knot in my chest. I smiled when they greeted me. Polite words, stiff hugs, eyes that scanned too quickly. They were welcoming, technically, but not warm and not subtle. I was a guest, not family, not yet, and maybe never. His mother met me at the door. Cream-colored suit, pearls, a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "You must be Aaliyah," she said. "Jordan's told us quite a bit." She extended her hand. Firm grip, polite tone, but every word felt measured, rehearsed. Inside, his sister Rebecca sat curled on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up just long enough to say, "Wow, you're even prettier than the photos." Then added, "Jordan usually goes for our kind of girls, you know, lawyers, analysts, but I guess he's branching out." I smiled. Tight, controlled. Dinner wasn't for hours, but I already felt full, with tension I hadn't asked for. They didn't say anything cruel, not directly, but every compliment had an edge, every glance carried a message. You're not one of us, and we don't think you ever will be. Dinner was quiet, the kind of quiet filled with silverware clinks and unspoken judgments. Jordan's grandmother, Rose, sat at the head of the table. Small frame, sharp eyes, the kind that didn't miss much. Halfway through the meal, she looked up and asked, "Jordan mentioned you're studying business. From where?" I answered honestly. "Community college, night program. I'm also building a small startup, something to help local businesses compete with chains." For a second, no one spoke. Then Rose gave a dry chuckle. "Charming," she said. "Everyone has a passion project these days." Rebecca sipped her wine. Catherine offered a tight smile. "Technology is competitive," she added, "especially without the right connections." I kept my back straight, kept breathing. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Every word said one thing. Ambition doesn't count unless it comes from our side of town. After dinner, Jordan walked me to the guest room. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, guilt written all over his face. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "They just need time. They'll come around." I nodded, but it felt automatic. My chest was tight, not from what they said, but from what they didn't have to. They smiled, served wine, asked polite questions, and made it perfectly clear I wasn't one of them. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my dress, trying to decide if this was something I could handle long term. Not just their coldness, but the feeling of always being measured. Jordan kissed my forehead before leaving. "I love you," he whispered, and I believed him. But is love enough when the room you're entering never really opens the door? Would you stay, or walk away before it gets deeper? It started small. A comment under one of Jordan's photos. "She's clearly in it for the money." Then another. "Gold digger vibes." I tried to ignore them, but they kept coming. Rebecca posted a throwback picture of Jordan and his ex. Caption, "Back when things made sense." Hundreds of likes. No tags. But the message was loud enough. Catherine began texting Jordan daily, always with some family emergency. Things that couldn't wait. Things that somehow always pulled him away. At events, people smiled too hard. Said things like, "You're so articulate," or "You must be really lucky." The worst part? Some of them weren't strangers. They were friends of his family, people he grew up with. I wasn't just dating Jordan anymore. I was being tested, watched, judged. Every step forward felt like walking through fog with eyes following me from every direction. We were at a charity event downtown. Old hotel, marble floors, velvet ropes. Jordan stepped ahead toward the VIP lounge. I followed. The security guard put his hand out, right in front of me. "Sorry, this area's for members only." Jordan turned back, confused. "She's with me." The guard didn't budge. "I understand, sir, but access is restricted." Jordan's voice got sharp. "She has more class than half the people in that room." Still, the guard looked at me, then looked away. People nearby started watching. Whispers, raised eyebrows. I could feel the heat rise in my face. I tugged Jordan's sleeve gently. "It's fine," I said. But it wasn't. It wasn't about a room or a policy. It was about who looked like they belonged and who didn't. And in that moment, I knew exactly which one they thought I was. It was a family photo shoot for the local business journal, a spread on the Coleman legacy. 3 generations, 1 empire. I stood to the side, dressed in soft gray, hair done, heels aching. The photographer called out names. Jordan took his place next to his mother, then his sister, then his uncle. I started to move forward. Catherine turned slightly, smiled. "Just bloodline for this one," she said gently. Like it was nothing. Like it wasn't meant to sting. I froze, nodded, stepped back. The flash went off. They smiled perfectly. No one looked my way. Later, I saw the photo online. Front page, every face crisp and proud, every hand touching another's shoulder. I wasn't there, not in the picture, not in the legacy, not in the frame they wanted the world to see. I saw it on my lunch break. Someone tagged me in a post. A tabloid headline in bold. Black Cinderella or business scammer. My photo was underneath. One from our last public event, me in a simple dress smiling beside Jordan. But the caption said more than the picture ever could. Who is Aaliyah Thomas, really? A barista with ambition or a master manipulator? My hands started shaking. I clicked the comments. Some defended me, most didn't. She's playing him. Watch her disappear once the money's locked in. Another social climber with a pretty face. I left work early without telling anyone. Sat on the cold tile floor of my bathroom, phone face down, lights off. I didn't cry right away, but when the tears came, they didn't stop. Not because of the lies, but because, deep down, part of me wondered if they were right. It happened on a hike, no cameras, no candles, just trees, quiet, and the sound of our steps on damp earth. We stopped at a clearing. Sunlight filtered through the branches. He turned to me, nervous, serious, soft. I don't care what anyone says. I love you. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me? He didn't have a speech, just a small box and shaking hands. I didn't cry. I smiled, whispered yes, felt his arms wrap around me like safety. But later, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the noise came rushing back. The headlines, the whispers, the way his mother looked at me, the way the world would. I knew love didn't fix everything, but in that moment it gave me something to hold on to. A small, steady light in the middle of a storm I knew hadn't passed. She showed up unannounced. I opened the door and froze. Rose Coleman, pearls, gloves, eyes like steel. I won't take much of your time, she said, stepping inside before I could speak. She looked around. My second-hand couch, faded curtains, textbooks stacked on the table. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a checkbook, wrote quickly, tore the slip clean. $500,000, she said, placing it on the counter. You leave Jordan. No explanation, no goodbye. I stared at it. The number, the signature, the insult. You'll never belong here, Aaliyah, she continued. You can't buy grace. You weren't raised for this world. And eventually, he'll see it. My hands stayed at my sides. My throat burned, but I didn't move. She turned to leave, paused at the door. Think it over. You have 1 week. After that, things get difficult. I stared at the check after she left. $500,000, just sitting there. Enough to erase every student loan. Start over somewhere far, quiet, safe. But I didn't touch it. Instead, I called Jordan, told him everything. Her visit, the offer, the threat. He didn't yell, he didn't panic. He just said, "We're stronger than that." Later that night, I took the check, walked it to the trash and ripped it in two. Then ripped it again and again. Because that money came with a message, that I wasn't worthy, that I could be bought. But they were wrong. I didn't love Jordan for his name or the house he grew up in or the zeros in his bank account. I loved him because he saw me, believed in me, and I wasn't going to trade that for a check. I'm not for sale, I whispered to no one, and neither is Jordan. The chapel was small, modest flowers, soft music, only 50 chairs. Half of them were filled, mostly my side, mom, cousins, friends from the shop. The Coleman row? Sparse. No father, no uncles, no old family friends. Just Jordan's mother, his sister Rebecca, and, at the end, Rose. She sat still, back straight, gloved hands folded in her lap. Not a smile, not a blink. When I walked down the aisle, she didn't even look at me. But I felt her presence like cold air. Every vow, every word carried weight. Because this wasn't just a wedding. It was a stand. A line drawn in the middle of generations. Jordan held my hands tight, spoke clearly, promised love, loyalty, and truth. And I meant every word I gave him back. But even as the guests clapped, I knew the real ceremony had just begun. The part no one rehearses. Being married into a family that never wanted you there. The music had just started back up. Laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of a reception trying its best. I stood quietly, watching everyone, watching her. Rose, still unmoved. Rebecca scrolling on her phone. Catherine whispering to a cousin with that same fixed smile. Then I walked to the DJ table, tapped his shoulder. "Can I borrow the mic?" He hesitated. I gave him a nod. Jordan looked up from across the room, confused, curious. He mouthed, "What are you doing?" I just smiled, held the mic. The room slowly hushed. "I want to say something." I began, my voice calm but clear. Not to defend myself, just to tell the truth. I scanned the room, eyes locked in. Even Rose looked up. You all think you know who I am. And you, if you were in her shoes, would you speak up or stay silent? You all think you know who I am, I said into the mic, but you only know one part of the story. I took a breath, felt the weight lift, just enough to stand taller. For the past 3 years, while I was making lattes and earning my degree at night, I was also building something. I paused. I'm the founder of EdVision, an education tech startup focused on underserved schools. We just closed a $12 million deal with a national foundation last week. A murmur spread like wildfire. Chairs shifted. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Wait, that's her?" I kept going. I didn't need a name to open doors. I built my own. I looked at Rose, at Catherine, at the faces that once saw me as disposable. I didn't marry into wealth. I married Jordan, and I came with value, on my own terms. I turned slowly, locking eyes with Rose, the same woman who once handed me a $500,000 check like a favor, who told me I'd never belong. I held the mic tighter. You offered me $500,000 to walk away, I said, voice steady, and I didn't take it. She blinked, barely. Because now, I make that much in 3 months. Gasps rippled through the room. Jordan's mouth parted, stunned. Catherine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Rebecca finally looked up from her phone. The room buzzed. Some clapped. Others whispered. I didn't flinch. I'm not here because I needed a rich man. I'm here because I chose love, while building something that matters. I placed the mic down gently. Silence hung for half a second, then erupted. Not chaos, but awe. And for the first time they looked at me not as a mistake, but as someone impossible to ignore. After my speech, the room didn't just shift, it tilted. Catherine approached me first, that practiced grace now edged with hesitation. I had no idea you were in tech, she said, smile trying hard to be sincere. I serve on the education board for the city. Perhaps we could talk sometime? I nodded politely, hiding the echo of every cold glance she'd given me months before. Then Rebecca. She walked up slower, chewing on her lip. So, about EdVision, she started, avoiding direct eye contact. I'm majoring in communications. I mean, if you ever need interns or social media help. I paused. Her voice, once laced with mockery, now almost humble. Email my assistant, I replied gently. We'll see if there's a fit. Jordan raised an eyebrow in amused disbelief. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was just a shift. The ones who once questioned my seat at the table now asked if they could join it. Later that night, after the crowd had thinned and the music softened, Rose found me on the balcony. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, staring out at the city lights. Then finally, quietly, she spoke. I was wrong. Her voice, stripped of sharpness, felt like truth. I misjudged you, not just who you are, but what you stand for. I turned toward her, calm but firm. I didn't need your approval, I said, but I needed you to see me. She nodded slowly, hands clasped in front of her. I see you now, and I'm sorry. I looked her in the eyes. Even if I had nothing, I said, even if I were just a barista with bills and dreams, I still deserved respect. A pause. You did, she whispered, and I hope one day I can earn yours. That night, something shifted. Not erasure of the past, but the start of something new. A year later, Jordan and I launched the Coleman Johnson Scholarship Fund, a program dedicated to young Black women pursuing business and tech. We started small, but the response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, stories arrived, girls who saw themselves in me. Then came the invitation to speak at the National Summit for Women of Color in Education. I stood on that stage in front of hundreds, the lights warm on my skin, the silence waiting. I was once told I didn't belong, I began. That no degree, no background, no money meant no place at the table. I let that sink in. But I learned something. You don't need permission to build your own table, you just need the courage to start. Applause rose like a wave, and for a moment I saw them. Young women, heads lifted, eyes wide, believing that maybe, just maybe, they could be next. The ultrasound picture sat on our fridge. Tiny hands, a curved spine, a heartbeat we'd heard together. I was 3 months pregnant, and somehow everything felt softer. Jordan painted the nursery himself, And every Sunday, both our mothers, yes, mine and his, tended the garden together, roses, tomatoes, lavender, and laughter that once felt impossible. I'd glance out the window and see them, my mom kneeling in the dirt, Catherine offering her a sun hat, the two of them exchanging tips about soil and sunlight as if they'd been neighbors for years. "I never thought I'd see this," Jordan whispered one evening, his hand resting on my belly. "Me neither," I said. "But maybe that's what love does. Not just between two people, but between families who once stood on opposite sides. Somehow, healing found us, and it bloomed." Success isn't about money. It's not the contracts, the house, or the headlines. It's waking up every morning knowing you stayed true to your roots, to your values, to your voice. They tried to buy my silence. They tried to erase my worth. But what they didn't realize was, I never needed their approval to shine. If you've ever been underestimated, because of where you're from, how you look, or how quietly you started, know this: you are more than enough. And your story? It's just getting started. Comment, "My story isn't over," if you've ever felt overlooked. Let's show the world what underestimated women can become. And if this story touched you, tap that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. This isn't just a fairy tale. This is real. This is us.